Pass rush or pass coverage? This seems to be the big debate among many football fans and teams alike. On one side, you have the pass rush arguing the impact both the run and pass games, while on the other side, coverage will argue that due to the increase in the quick passing game in the pros, that they have now become more important. Regardless of which side you take in this debate, it's clear which side the Cowboys are on in 2020. They invested heavily in their defensive line this offseason. They signed defensive tackles Gerald McCoy and Dontari Poe. Last year, they re-signed DeMarcus Lawrence to a 5-year, $105 million contract. And recently, they signed Everson Griffen to a 1-year deal. Needless to say, this is a formidable front, and all four players have clear roles in this defense. Starting from left to right, Lawrence lined up as the left edge rusher on 90% of his snaps last season. Meanwhile, McCoy and Poe are the defensive tackles in this scheme, and they'll line up as the 3-tech and 1-tech defenders respectively. Last but certainly not least, we have Everson Griffen. He'll slide into his natural position at the right edge rusher in this defense. He's a great fit for what the Cowboys are going to do. In this video, I wanted to focus on Griffen as a pass rusher. After going through his film from last season, the one thing that kept standing out to me was how well his hands and feet pair together. He bursts off the line of scrimmage and he can create a pocket collapsing bull rush. He knows how to convert speed to power. Even when an offensive lineman anchors for his punch, they'll sometimes get blown backwards anyways. Even though some of these rushes were nullified by a quick throw from the quarterback, this move still creates plenty of pressure. It also sets Griffen up for his best move, which is his spin. Griffen has perfected this technique over the course of his career. In the wildcard round of the playoffs, Griffen lined up as the wide 9 technique outside of Terron Armstead. Armstead is one of the best left tackles in the entire NFL. Watch how Griffen spun inside to beat him for a sack on this play. After the snap, Griffen took 2 steps up the field to attack Armstead's outside shoulder. He pretended like he was going to swipe down with his inside hand. Instead, Griffen drove his arm inside Armstead's shoulder pad and then dropped his hips and spun using his momentum. He shifted from the outside to the inside gap. He finished the move by ice-picking Armstead's inside shoulder and then used that force to propel himself towards the quarterback. He comboed with Daniel Hunter to split the sack on this play. Now, if you watch this from the all-22 view, you can see that this rush actually saved a potential touchdown. It was 3rd and 4 and Tengid was getting open in the back right of the end zone. He attacked the safety with his over route out of the slot. It's likely that Breeze would have found him after moving on from his initial reads if neither Hunter nor Griffen got to him first. However, they were there to instantly beat their respective offensive tackles, and they stopped this throw before it happened. What's fascinating as I went through his film was that Griffen beat a good number of premier tackles using the same move. In Week 10 against his new teammate Tyron Smith, he used that same spin half a dozen times in this game as well. He repeatedly beat Smith inside, and he pressured Dak on a good number of his plays. These pressures, while they didn't end up as sacks, forced Dak into making off-balance throws or to scramble outside the pocket. Some of the others were simply defeated by the play call and by the quarterback getting rid of the ball quickly. Using this move though, I must have seen Griffen win at least 4 or 5 of these reps. This spin move is just so dangerous and it's very hard to stop. I fully expect him to keep on using it next season as well. Speaking of creating pressure, in 2019, Griffen created a pressure on 12.8% of his rushes. As you can see on your screen, that's slightly above average. He's obviously not as high as a guy like Zadarius Smith, who had an incredible season last year, or even his old teammate Daniel Hunter. While this isn't the case, Griffen is still good in his own right. He still offers a ton of value, especially at his contract. Now, before we move on from the screen, the other person I want you to note on this graph is DeMarcus Lawrence. He created a pressure on roughly 14% of his pass rushes last season. I see big things coming from this defensive line next season. Moving on, something else I want to point out is that I've seen a lot of people say that Griffen slowed down at the end of the season. Basically, if you look at the first half of the season and you compare that to the second half, he didn't create nearly as many pressures. There's definitely some truth to this. Griffen's pressure rates from week 1 to week 9 were close to 15%, while afterwards, and including the playoffs, he finished the year averaging 8%. This is a pretty massive drop-off. It could be the case that he was tired, or that he simply started the season hot with some good matchups and then reverted back to the norm, but regardless, the one thing I do want to note is that in 2019, this was the most times he's ever rushed the passer in his entire career. He rushed for almost 600 snaps. At the age of 32, I just don't think the Cowboys should have him repeat that next season. Hopefully, they'll rotate in guys like Tyron Crawford, Aldon Smith, and possibly Randy Gregory if he ever gets reinstated. This should allow Griffen to save his energy to focus on rushing the passer. Now, while I do think Griffen is a good player overall, I wanted to go over the times where his pass rush didn't work as planned. These plays fell into 2 major categories: blocking techniques and self-inflicted moves. In terms of blocking, quick sets and play action gave Griffen the hardest time. He He was stalled immediately out of the gate on many of these plays, and this seemed to give him a lot of trouble. Since he couldn't build up his speed and use that as a weapon, it simply reduces effectiveness. Griffen has pretty good hand-fighting ability, but these situations definitely slowed him down. The other time I saw his pass rush fail was primarily when it was self-inflicted. Griffen has a habit of chopping his feet before he makes contact. This would completely reduce his power through his punch. Also, from my tracking, Griffen will sometimes take too many steps on his approach. He'll take 5 steps before making contact, and this extra amount of time and width allows the blocker to fully set an anchor. Based on everything that I saw, I much prefer when Griffen goes full tilt around the edge. I love it when he uses either his speed to power bull rush or that spin move that we already talked about in this video. That's where he's the most dangerous. Having to start and stop just doesn't allow him to do this. To wrap up this video, the Cowboys signed Griffen to a 1-year contract worth up to $6 million. This is a fantastic deal, and he fills such an obvious need in this defense. This could legitimately be one of my favorite signings of all offseason. Now, I haven't really talked about him as a run defender in this video, and that was on purpose. In my opinion, rushing the passer is where Griffen offers the most value to the Cowboys. Even if he only plays on 2/3 of the snaps that he did with the Vikings and saves his energy for rushing the passer, he'll still offer a lot of value. If I'm Mike Nolan, I'm going to tell him to use his speed to power bull rush off the edge. I'm going to allow him to freely combo that with the spin move back inside, and that will put Griffen in the right position to be successful in this defense. Well, that's all I have for you in this one. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you subscribe to my channel. Also, if you support me on my Patreon, my fantasy football rankings are now available in the link below. If you want the Excel versions of all these files, all it takes is just a $1 a month donation, and I'll gladly update those rankings all summer long. Next up on this channel, we have Kenyon Drake and his fit in Cliff Kingsbury's offense. I had a lot of fun breaking him down. Until then, you can follow me on Twitter for my latest updates at Samuel R. Gold.